Listen, we got a lot of departures, and this is not even it as far as the transfer portal. Megan, our producer, did a fantastic job with this. But since we have, come on the air, not since we come on the air, but since we got all this planned out, Dominic Blaylock has entered the portal as well, giving Georgia an even 9. And that's not even. This is even what we're looking at right now. Bill Norton was the first. Obviously, he came. That was in December, right? And Bill Norton has a landing spot. That's Arizona. Eric Gilbert, time will tell on that. Brett Seither is headed to Georgia Tech, according to reports. I don't think James Singletary, Jacob Hood, or Tresman Marshall have chosen anybody. And MJ Sherman is off to Nebraska. Guys, when you look at the dog departures, transfer portal, what's the biggest one? What's the one that surprised you? What's the one that, you're like, all right, this guy could have helped Georgia most the next year? What's the ones just stands out to you for whatever reason?
I don't know that I would say I was predicting him to help Georgia next year, but Jaheim Singletary's seemed a bit interesting to me personally. I mean, I thought that there probably would be some attrition from the young guys when it came to the defensive backfield, but Singletary was such a highly rated player and a guy that had seen Georgia's system work kind of so proof positive that I thought he might stick around. And so his was just a little bit surprising to me. I get it. And I think that that's pretty telling, actually, of what he sees as the future of that room. So that should be encouraging, even though it sucks to lose a 5-star player anytime. But I think Singletary's departure, to me, stood out probably the most of any of them, just because I thought it was an interesting choice at this point.
Yeah, I obviously pick it based on why it stands out to you. I was just bringing up some reasons that it might stand out to you. But yeah, I would it'd probably be hard to disagree with that one all the way around. And it didn't even feel like a surprise as much as you're just kind of like, this never really had a chance to blossom. This never really had a chance to get going. He was, if I'm not mistaken, Jake, he was a summer enrollee.
Yeah, that's it's best I remember.
Right, yeah. So summer enrollee. He was. Yeah, I mean, he was several months behind, Dalen Everett, who actually, kind of made a little bit of a splash there and was Georgia's number 3 corner for a while Nyland Green was battling. May have been the number 3 corner after Nyland Green came back. Palmer, any of those transfers stand out to you? Obviously, Dominic Blaylock can be a part of that group as well.
Yeah, I'll go with Tresman Marshall because of the contributor that he was, and also because I think you were going to take him, Jake.
Nah, I actually wasn't, but that's a good pick.
The contributor that he was to this Georgia defense, I understand really with all these guys. I do understand why they are leaving. They're not first on the depth chart. They're behind several guys, and in most cases, you could probably make the case that they were never going to be first on the depth chart. But Tresman was a major contributor, obviously an upperclassman looking for, more playing time, and I can't fault him for that. Do think that a team is going to get a really good player in Tresman Marshall, somebody that's been a contributor when healthy. When he's been healthy, he's been a major contributor. Maybe not the first, second, third linebacker. I mean, this year he was the third linebacker, but Georgia really only played 2. But somebody that has been able to provide depth, throughout his entire career when healthy. And if I'm not mistaken, he might have been the highest rated guy in that class. No, he came in with Nakobe Dean, but he was pretty highly rated, if I'm not mistaken.
Tresman Marshall?
Was a 4-star guy for sure.
Yeah.
And again, to me, and probably even more so than Singletary, at least in my view, I think he was probably projecting into the future about look what Georgia brought in this year, in terms of the signing class for 2023 at the inside linebacker position. Plus, you've got what's already in place. I mean, I get it, man. And, Jake, I think you said on the board, there's probably 10 schools in the SEC this guy can go start for.
Coming in as high as the number 2 linebacker in the country per ESPN.
We know for a fact there's not a school he can't go into and be the number 3 linebacker for.
Oh, sure.
He was number 3 for Georgia, and Georgia's got the best 2 inside linebackers probably in the league, right up there with anybody. I look at it like this from Tresman Marshall's standpoint. If you're going to go somewhere, you're looking at a guy that probably wants to be a 6-year senior at some point. Go somewhere and spend 2 years there. Don't just spend 1. I mean, one, you can get some stuff out of it. You do the Joe Burrow thing. Even if you're not playing that position, you can go do some stuff and help yourself out. And, I think Tresman could go play at a place like Miami, or he could go to an Oregon, or, there are a lot of different places, I'm sure, that are very interested in adding a guy like him to their roster. Just hope he can stay healthy for his sake. He's had a variety of injuries. Listen, I don't know that Ryan Davis would be that far behind. It may be after spring, may have a chance to graduate this spring or something like that. But Tresman Marshall's laid it all out there for Georgia. He's not going to ever have a problem coming back to the University of Georgia. That will never be a problem for him. I'm going to go with a guy that's going to help me make this transition that we're about to do to the NFL draft, and Dominic Blaylock. Doesn't surprise me. What it does, though, is it assures that somebody is going to play slot receiver for Georgia at some point that is not Dominic Blaylock or Kearis Jackson. And it's been a long, long time since it hasn't been at least one of those guys. Since, neither one of them did it in 2018 because Blaylock wasn't on the roster, and Kearis Jackson played more running back than he did slot receiver.
When he redshirted that year, too.
Yeah, he redshirted, but he also had one carry on a tall sweep for 6 yards. So he basically
MTSU,
did nothing.
My first game that I covered.
Yeah, MTSU, that's right. Cade Mays got stomped out there left tackle a couple times, and I think folks kind of figured that Cade Mays wasn't quite the next Andrew Thomas at that point. But against Middle Tennessee. But it's been a long time, guys, since Dominic Blaylock or Kearis Jackson wasn't playing. So 2019. So, and then, Kearis stepped in, had his best year when Dominic didn't play at all. There in 2020. So, you're looking at Kearis Jackson leaving. You're looking at those other guys leaving on that departures list for the NFL draft. And, Georgia's got to retool at the slot receiver position. It's something I'm going to write about and get really in depth with tomorrow at DawgsHQ with an impact analysis on losing those two players. But the thing about it is Georgia has guys that are supremely capable. I mean, Lab McConkey, which we're hearing is going to stay. We'll see if he actually does. Haven't really heard an official decision on that. He could have been going to stay, 30 minutes ago and got some new information to decide right now that he's going to leave. I don't know. But right now I would say he's probably going to stay. So you got him, perfectly capable of playing in the slot, maybe more of an ideal fit for the slot than anything else. You've got Arian Smith. That's more of, I think, of a specialist gadget guy out of the slot, but probably has more experience actually lining up there than anybody else in Georgia's offense. Dominic Lovett, also very capable of the slot. Jake, I think you would probably agree. Anthony Evans, probably the most, agreeable to the slot out of the receivers Georgia signed in this new class.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that he's a perfect fit. And I mean, he's basically the second coming of Arian Smith, although he's probably much more football focused than Smith was in his high school career. I mean,
God, I heard F come out of your mouth there, and I thought you were about to say much faster. Man.
Hey, listen, if you go look at mile split, his 100-meter times, Anthony Evans' 100-meter time in high school per mile split is faster than Arian Smith's.
What is Anthony Evans?
Anthony Evans, I think, is 10.13.
Oh, I thought he was like a 10.6.
Well, and I mean, you've got CJ Smith, somebody that's a burner as well.
Yeah,
maybe not necessarily for the.
I'm sorry, I misspoke. 10.27. 10.27.
Okay. Well, still.
Wow, so slow.
10.27. Arian Smith.
Palmer was running 10.27s down Lumpkin Street uphill.
So 2020 outdoor rankings, Arian Smith 10.47. So a full 2 seconds, full 0.2 seconds faster in high school per the mile split. So
yeah, my man Matthew C's got a good point about Jermaine Johnson. How he just needed 1 year, 100% on that Tresman Marshall thing. He might only need 1 year, but it's give yourself 2. It's never a bad thing. I think he could go do that and decide to jump to the NFL, go be a 100 tackle guy. He just needs to stay healthy.
I think, too, that Tresman Marshall and Jaheim Singletary are two guys that it would not surprise me to see Georgia playing against one day.
Yeah, I could see that. I could also see both of them at Florida State or both of them at Florida. Or not Florida, but both of them at Florida State, both of them at
Singletary to Florida makes a lot of sense to me.
It does. They were heavily involved first time around, right?
They were, yeah. He was an Ohio State commit the first time. But, yeah, Florida was definitely a big part of his recruitment for sure.
Well, gotcha. He's from Jacksonville and did take notice on his Instagram story. He had I'm coming home playing in the background. So whether that means to the state of Florida, to be a Jacksonville Dolphin.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Big get for the Dolphins.
Big get. Did Deion Sanders become the head coach of the Jacksonville Dolphins? We'll never know. But no, looking back to this slot thing, really in depth. I've already gotten most of it done. Encourage you guys to come on over, check us out. $30, and that'll get you through August 31st. Through that. By the way, Roos, that story that you said you wanted to make free, I made it free before you were done talking. So if you want to come over and read that Devin Willock story, the Thank You Devin by Jake Roos, come over and read it. It is a free story. Something we wanted our subscribers to be able to see first thing this morning, but definitely don't feel like leaving it long enough to make $1 off of it, because that would be BS, and we're not going to do that. So, all right, when you're looking at the departures from the NFL draft part of this, biggest loss in your opinion? I think we can, obviously you can even pick, I guess, amongst the guys that we knew were leaving, even though I think Jalen Carter is just kind of a slam dunk there, but biggest loss amongst the guys I think that maybe there was a question about.
Oh, it's tough. I mean, Jalen Carter obviously is the answer. I mean, there's no question about it. There's nobody.
I would argue with you, Roos, that I think I would take Broderick Jones. I would bring Broderick Jones back before I brought Jalen Carter back.
Jalen Carter is just on a different level, man. I mean, Jalen Carter may be the best defensive player in college football.
He is.
I mean, Broderick Jones is probably not the best offensive tackle in college football.
But I would argue that he can be.
Yeah, I would agree. And on this team, that may be even more important. I'm not saying that that's not the case. To me, Carter's just, he's just a different cat. I don't know. I said Warren Erickson because I think that Carter and Jones were so expected, at least in my mind. Erickson or McClendon. God, see, you made me do it now. McClendon is the guy who I thought could have returned and could have probably boosted his stock even further. And I think that because I expected those other two guys to go, and he was kind of a maybe come back, I think he's the most impactful personally. I mean, the other guys I kind of expected it for. I mean, I thought Keely Ringo would be a 3-year guy in college and high school. I mean, that was just the expectation when you're 6'2" and you run 4.3.
Dude, I'm sitting here looking at this list and I'm seeing at least 5 guys I felt that way about. Ringo, Smith, Washington, Carter, Jones.
Yeah.
I feel like all of those guys were 3 and done.
Yeah, Carter, I don't know that I would have said
no
that.
One's not.
Maybe straight coming out of high school. I mean, I got to listen, I've told this story a million times. I'll tell it again here, though. I remember going down to Apopka, and I interviewed his high school coach. I interviewed Jalen Carter's high school coach. And he didn't tell me who said it, but he said there was a college coach who came through here, and he said that kid right there will be a top 10 pick in the NFL draft when he leaves college. And that story always stuck with me because I've never heard a guy say that. I've never heard a coach tell that story. And sure enough, that turned out to be right.
You should follow up. Use your great reporting skills. Follow up now that he's out of college, probably going to be a top 10 pick. I
would be interested to see who said that. I would like to know who said that.
I do agree with you. I think Warren McClendon, and I was excited when you said Warren Erickson because I was like, okay, great.
Come on, you had to know I was misspeaking.
I was surprised. I was surprised, but excited that my guy was still on the table. I do think Warren McClendon is a big one because you do lose both tackles here. And Georgia did have 3 guys that played tackle at a starter level this season. And if you could have, and Amarius Mims didn't have the option to leave. So if you could have brought one of those 2 back, that would have been huge, and tackle would not be a question at all. It kind of like it wasn't last year. You were losing Jamari Salyer, but Broderick Jones had played and started some games. So you didn't feel like that was a major concern. I felt like I wrote that a couple times this year about Broderick, is that typically losing your starting left tackle means that that's going to be a huge concern going into the season. It was not, even though that was Broderick's first year as a full-time starter. Next year will be the first time that Amarius Mims is a full-time starter. And I don't think that he's going to be a concern, but losing both tackles, now you're going to have somebody inevitably somebody at one of those tackle positions that is, unless you start Xavier Truss at a tackle, and I guess he's still got a decision to make. He's the only person that, outside of Amarius Mims, that has a start at tackle under his belt left on this team. And so, I think that immediately becomes a major question. Does Ernest Green get healthy in time for spring? And is he able to push for playing time at tackle? If Cedric Van Pran comes back, we saw Austin Blasky play tackle in the spring game last year. Could he play tackle? Tate Ratledge and Xavier Truss are both guys that came out of high school as tackles, but have spent the majority of their time in college as guards. Does either one of them make the bump outside to tackle? I think that is losing two tackles is huge. And McClendon was the one that I thought had a better chance of coming back.
Palmer, I swear to God, I was about to start a tackle drinking game.
tackle.
Just turn the bottle up. No, the reason I would pick Broderick Jones is Broderick Jones would give you the best chance of like having your offensive line back for another season. Because losing McClendon, would suck. But then, Amarius Mims did start the last 2 games. And so I think, you would basically, and as much as I think Warren McClendon was just an absolute rock for Georgia, never really stood out. And that's the best thing about him. As much as he was great, I think, you've got 2 supremely high upside tackles there. Maybe the 2 most talented tackle combo that Georgia's seen in a long time. It seemed, all the way back since 2019, maybe, to Isaiah Wilson and Andrew Thomas. I was trying. That was actually kind of a joke. I was looking at Roos's face while I said that to see if he'd pick up all the way back to 2019.
I was sitting there when you first said it. I was like, it really wasn't that long ago.
Well, I still think those 2 might be more talented. I think
as a whole, yes, I would agree with that. And
yeah.
To me, I think that people. I think
the right tackle might be more talented than the left tackle in that scenario long term. But
I agree, and I think that it's one of the things I think. Listen, Broderick Jones, special makeup, special build, the whole 9 yards. Prototypical.
Hey, also, let's just go ahead and get this out of the way, too. Found this out during the playoff. A lot of stuff we learned about these guys during the playoff. Cool-ass kid. Like,
Broderick.
The funniest dude. Very much enjoyed my time with him at Media Day. A great kid to talk to. One of the best.
Listen, that guy's he's out of Lithonia. I'll tell you this. I think you know this. You've covered kids out of Lithonia. It don't come easy in Lithonia, man.
Oh, no.
That is a Buford. It ain't. No. I think people are going to miss Warren McClendon a lot more than they think they will.
Oh, sure.
Warren McClendon, to me, was a guy who could have played any of the 5 positions at the University of Georgia on the offensive line. I thought that coming out of high school. To me, he was a do-it-all offensive lineman, a complete Swiss Army knife. You could have plugged and played him anywhere across that line. And I think that's a loss that's really going to be felt. I think everybody anticipated Broderick and says, obviously left tackle, that's the money position. How do you replace that? Warren McClendon, that's going to be a one that people definitely are, I think, maybe wringing their hands over next year, a little bit stronger than they might be expecting.
Georgia Show loyalist Matthew C. down here says, Christopher Smith, where is he on this list? He's not on this list because Christopher Smith is out of gas, dude. He has nothing left at the University of Georgia. These are all guys that gave up eligibility to enter the NFL draft. Chris Smith is on the very short list of guys who just are all the way to the end of the rope. Him and Stetson Bennett and Robert Beal, I believe, and that is it.
Almost never happens anymore.
Yeah. Those dudes could not play no matter what. There's just nothing. Christopher Smith, for some reason, late in the year, thought he had eligibility left.
Yeah,
and we definitely know better than him.
There you go. There's a graphic for Matthew C. Shout out to
there you go, my man. But I totally agree with you from a leadership standpoint and things of that nature. Chris Smith is definitely a big loss. Definitely an emotional leader. And, I remember this is one of the things I think I'm most proud of is I remember seeing Chris Smith in some practices years ago and just kind of the way he was being coached. And it kind of, as a reporter, you kind of have things that lead you to things that lead you to ask things. And sometimes when you ask the right questions, you get more answers out of people than you do. And so I reached out to somebody very close to the staff and, very close to the situation. And I said, hey, what do y'all think about Chris Smith? I kind of noticed this and this and the way he was coaching. Like, man, that kid's a baller. We love the way he plays the game. Just got to get him a little stronger, get him a little bigger, and get him to hold up. And some of those hold up issues were there last year. They were not there this year. Big time prospect, a big time football player, and maybe an NFL prospect too. I think he's going to get dinged a little bit for being undersized, and I wonder how well he's going to run. The Earl Thomases don't grow on trees, and that's kind of the mold he's made out of. And Earl Thomas was I think like a 4.3 guy, 4.2 guy, very fast. And I think Christopher Smith's going to need to be that if he's going to play, if he's going to be a high draft pick in the NFL draft. Hey, out of all those guys, not named Jalen Carter, who do you think gets drafted the highest? Real quick.
Oof. I think Keely's just going to – I think Keely – the people will take him on upside. I think that he'll go – I think he'll measure out perfectly. I think athletically it'll all be there. I think that somebody will make a bet on Keely Ringo and say, look, this is the best piece of clay that we can possibly get our hands on.
I like that. I think Keely Ringo is Richard Sherman with great speed. Like he's Richard Sherman with
if that were the case, wouldn't you take him high too?
Absolutely. 100.
Just to be different, I'll say Broderick Jones. I think
that's what I was thinking too. I think Broderick's
he's the only one that I think has a chance outside of – I mean, I saw a mock that had 5 guys going in the first round a couple weeks ago, and that was Jalen, Keely, Broderick, Darnell, Nolan. I don't necessarily – I'll be very curious to see where Nolan and Darnell go.
My dark horse is Darnell. I think that people, again, will fall in love with the measurables. I think that people will just
if he can run really well.
Yeah. People will be. I think people are going to be stunned by his.
Georgia needs every single thing to go right, but it could have 5 first-round guys again this year. I mean, I don't think it won't, more than likely, but Carter, Broderick, Ringo, Darnell, Nolan.
We got people betting on Kenny.
I can't see him.
I have a hard time seeing it too, but I also think if you get a team there at the end of the first round, they fall in love with him during the process because I think he's going to run really well. I think his arm length stuff's going to be there. I mean, listen, it didn't matter for Trayvon Walker or Leonard Floyd or any of those guys that they didn't put up massive sack seasons. And Nolan was kind of on his way to putting up a career year when he got hurt against Florida. I would, again, I don't think it's going to happen either. I think probably the best they're going to do is 3. But 5 dogs.
I think they could get to 4.
It wouldn't shock me if they
I think the line would be 3.5, heavily favoring 3.
Yeah, I think you're looking at 5 guys inside the top 50, because then you get to throw Chris Smith maybe in the mix there, because I think he's a guy
that would probably get you to 6 in the top 50.
Yeah, could
Nolan,
possibly.
Darnell, and Chris.
There are definitely some guys who could fall out of there. All right, speaking of
I'll be very curious to see where Kenny McIntosh goes. I think
that would be interesting too because he could sneak in there. He could be a James Cook type. James Cook I think got drafted around 60 something or 70 something though.
Yeah, he was like a 3rd round, number 64 or something like that.
Yeah, 2nd round. I think his last pick in the 2nd round.